Hi, and welcome once again to Abacast. My guest today is someone with whom I'm relatively familiar. My son, Daniel Pitaluga, who is our business development team leader.
Indeed.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be
forward to this chat. You've got a background in financial services, obviously, from the get-go. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got here, kicking off maybe with your degree, what you did, and going back to that sort of time and the path that's led you here.
Yeah, well, originally I actually studied business management in uni. And when I came back, I thought it was a little bit of a tricky situation for me because I knew that I wanted to be in financial services, but I wasn't sure where I'd fit in. And I think a lot of the financial professionals in Gibraltar, they tend to go down the accounting route. And I knew that accounting was, certainly not for me. And it took a conversation with an old mentor of mine who was a financial advisor herself. And I thought that I fit in quite well to that role because it wasn't too much sitting behind a desk and looking at spreadsheets, but it was more to do with people and building relationships with people.
As a non-accountant myself, but surrounded by them, we can't say disparaging things about accountants on this podcast.
They are fantastic people.
Yeah, they're great folks. Yeah. So that different tack was investment advisory or investment an investment qualification. Why don't you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah,
that,
I mean
what that involved.
It was. A lot of it was centered around investment advisory and investment management, but it was a little bit of a wider net than that. The financial advising qualification included pensions, insurance, investment management, and regulation as well. So it covered a lot of bases, although I must say my favorite part of that was the investment management. Yeah.
Yeah. And to what extent do you think all of that background has started to infill your new role in sales, bluntly, but business development more generally?
Yeah, it's taught me a few different things. I think on the financial advisory side, it taught me a lot of technical knowledge, specifically building and protecting people's wealth. And the business management side of things was always a little bit more entrepreneurial. I think you're allowed to think a little bit differently when you're talking about potentially running your own business. And I think that entrepreneurial way of thinking has helped me quite a bit in how we've developed not just the team, our systems, but just the way that I approach business development generally.
You've actually been doing it for quite a while now. I still think of you as being obviously very young, and of course your main role in life is as the father to my favorite grandson baby. But that aside, your development in the role of sales leader, business development leader, tell us a little bit about how you find that fulfilling. Why is that an attraction to you, doing that kind of work?
Yeah, well, it's attractive because, as I mentioned, I think the people part of the role and the relationship building part of the role comes quite naturally to me. And I think one of the more fulfilling parts of it is actually when you do a good job for a client on a specific piece of business, or you help them achieve something that they want to achieve, and they come back to you for more. I think that's one of the most fulfilling parts of it, because it shows that not only that you've done a good job, but there's a deep foundation of trust there, and that's always very fulfilling for me.
Yes, and you mentioned the word trust, and I think that's absolutely key, because whilst I was never myself involved in a business development team per se, in a sales team, I did have a business development role in the practice for a long time, and I've always said that earning the client's trust is absolutely fundamental to not just bringing them on, but also obviously maintaining the relationship and keeping it going. What are your ways of establishing that trust? What do you think are the keynotes of doing that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because I think some people, they try to force it. They try to, build rapport by forcing it, and having, surface level common ground is often a way that, people kind of, make that connection. You like football, I like football. Wow,
let's play paddle.
Yeah, let's play paddle, whatever it might be, and automatically you think you build this kind of foundation of friendship. But in fact, trust is built not by what you say, but what you do, I think. So ultimately, it's managing expectations in the right way. It's meeting clients' objectives, and like I said, it's actually doing what you've told them you're going to do. And I think once you do that, even in the smallest ways, if it's meeting a deadline or keeping true to your word in whatever way that you've promised, I think that immediately brings a strong foundation of trust.
Yeah, and maybe even when you don't get it quite right, if you're upfront with them about it, then
yes,
that's also
yes
a keynote in
for sure,
establishing trust.
For sure. I think authenticity, I think, is super important in it, and transparency as well. You can sell someone the world and then you don't deliver, and then that relationship is bound to fail. But if you're open and honest with your clients, even when you perhaps haven't reached the target or you haven't achieved the optimal kind of goal, if you're open and honest about it, and you find a way to potentially rectify a situation or improve it, then clients are generally quite receptive to that as well. I think it's an important part of the role for sure.
Perhaps it's because I've been involved in the professional world for all my life, really. I've always found when someone's speaking eloquently and knowledgeably about something on which they're expert,
yes,
I've always found that a draw. I've always found that appealing.
Yes.
But clients are not always necessarily in the same bracket as that. So how do you translate? How, in your experience, do you translate kind of the jargon of the financial services world and the heavy jargon that we sometimes come across, and sometimes the complex concepts that we have to communicate? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think, and again, it's a really, really important part of the role, and that's something that was taught to me in the financial advising days. And the financial world is just full of incredibly complicated concepts and terms, and there are even words that have a completely different meaning in the financial services world than you would use in normal life. But again, I think it's the only way to really go about that in a proper way is to really understand those concepts. I think if you have a great grasp of what you're talking about, and of course the vocabulary to break it down into easily digestible kind of chunks or simple terms, makes all the difference to clients, because in fact you can very easily lose a client by being too jargon heavy or trying to thrust all your knowledge and kind of all that terminology in one conversation. There is actually a saying that always rings true in my mind, which is, if you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. And I think it really sticks with me, because you do have clients that's they understand everything from the get-go, but you do have probably, I would say, a lot of clients, or most of them, who need that breaking down.
Yes. Yeah, and communication is such an important part of sales, business development, client maintenance in general as well, relationship management. One's ability to communicate accurately, effectively, concisely, those are the kind of key attributes, aren't they, really? Just to put you a little bit on the spot now, as our BD leader, as our kind of head of sales, what do you think is the magic formula? What is it about us, not as a firm necessarily, but the combination of what we do, how we do it, the jurisdiction, our positioning in the financial world? What's the winning aspect of what?
The magic formula is very hard to pin down, but I think one of the things that has always meant a lot to me from day one at Abacus was always that we put the client first. And I think that's absolutely true. And if you actually mean it, and you put the client, and not just in terms of our general focus as a firm, but when you're dealing with a client and you put their needs and their objectives above yours, whatever yours might be, I think that really immediately helps you win over that client in a very positive way. As to a magic formula, like I said, it's incredibly hard to say there is one, but you can only do your best, and doing your best is listening as hard as you can, really drilling down to what their core needs are, having patience and not necessarily pushing any agendas or any of your needs on them, and then delivering on what you say you're going to deliver, I think is kind of summarizes it.
Yeah, I think that last bit there is critical. It's crucial, isn't it? Because when you think about integrity, what is integrity is the alignment of what you say with what you do, what you preach and what you actually roll out. And I would say that at Abacus, that's pretty much a defining characteristic for us, that we don't promise more than we can deliver, that we don't oversell, but neither do we pretend or fake what we can do. How do you think that has impacted our ability to win clients? I mean, what are the kind of clients that we win as a result of having and standing by that kind of principle?
Yeah, I mean, it's super important principle to stick by, I think, and what it allows us to do as well. And thankfully, as a firm, we're in a blessed position that we can choose our clients. I don't think we're in a need to take absolutely anyone on, and that level of integrity and that that gut feeling that you have about a client, sometimes I think you have to listen to very carefully. And when you act with integrity with clients, you always know that you're not going to find any kind of unforeseen problems or anything like that, because you know that you're doing it from a position of good faith and a position that the client will ultimately appreciate. Yeah.
You've talked about how it's important to communicate concepts in a simple enough fashion based on your understanding and knowledge of the product. But in your experience, what do you think clients need the most help with as part of the sales process before you're going to get them across the line?
Yeah.
What do you think they need the most help with? That is not just about communication of concepts. I mean, what are they looking for from us to help them with the onboarding process?
Yeah, I think primarily the one thing that I find with clients, especially in fiduciary work, is an understanding of the jurisdiction. I think, Gibraltar, thankfully now we're off the grey list and off the EU high risk list, which is fantastic. But some clients still think that it's, a jurisdiction that was, kind of where we were 20 or 30 years ago. And I think, really raising the bar in terms of the standards and what we expect or how we expect our clients to behave, I think is an important factor.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right, because you mentioned the grey list.
Yeah.
We're no longer on the grey list.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah.
Terrific. But you have the likes of Monaco. Talk to anybody about Monaco. They know exactly what it is. They know where it is. They know what it stands for. They understand its pull, its attraction. Monaco is now on the grey list.
Yes.
And it's just, and it's not about sort of having a snipe at Monaco, but just the fact that getting clients to understand what today's reality is, as opposed to a historic impression.
Yeah.
You're right. I think that's a big deal. I think that's a big part of unwinding.
It is, and I think apart from the jurisdiction, it then, a lot of it sometimes becomes process driven. I think because obviously Gibraltar being such a small place, not many people know the inner workings of how to get things done. And I think that's really where we've stepped up our game in recent years. I think we've made it as easy as possible for clients to be onboarded, obviously whilst remaining compliant. But we really have tried to drill down to what clients want from this process, or how best to guide the client journey in as efficient way as possible. And I think we've managed to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned sales people to anyone, and they'll probably want to dive behind the sofa. I know your sales team, it's a small team. What would you say are the characteristics that define them that are not consistent with that image of a salesperson? Because they are great people.
Yeah, yeah. I
What,
think.
what do you think they've got?
No, you're right as well. I think that, you know, when people think of salespeople, they think of these kind of annoying extroverts who can't shut up, and I think in part there's an element of truth to that. I think you do need to have a certain character to be in sales, but I think, you know, you need to define what is a salesperson versus what a good salesperson is, I think, and there's a big difference there. I think your stereotypical salesperson who you know, who's potentially kind of commission driven or has a you know, a more selfish agenda is very different to, I think, what clients, especially sophisticated clients, expect from nowadays, which is someone who's, you know, open, honest, patient, doesn't apply any kind of sales pressure to the conversation, and ultimately actually cares about them. I think that is a you know, a characteristic that is almost kind of, you know, forgotten about sometimes, that actually caring about the client matters a lot, you know.
Yes.
So I think we've done that quite well. I try to instill that kind of culture in the team. As you said, it's quite a small team, but yeah, I think it's at the forefront, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't lose clients often, mainly because there weren't that many of them.
Yeah.
But in my sphere, but every client loss, I mean, that caused me
Yes.
a loss of sleep
Yes.
all night, and it was just a really, really sad point. So I think, yes, you're right, caring is a huge element in there. In the light of what we do, and again, you look at our strap line, and we say we do trusts, companies, funds, pensions, wealth, blah, blah, blah. How does someone in your role as the business development leader for the whole practice gain enough? How do you become the deep generalist to be able to communicate across all of those to someone who's wanting to know?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it takes a lot of time over and above what you're doing in your day-to-day or your 9 to 5, as it were. You really need to understand the product, the service, the process, and the type of client. Because if you break down all the services that we offer, it's a very, very different end client that you're dealing with across the board, whether it be for a trust, a company, a pension, or an investment. The end client is completely different. And I was quite fortunate that I had the financial advising background, which gave me all the kind of traditional wealth management strings in my bow. But then, moving to the business development team here at the wider Abacus, immediately I was involved in corporate structuring, in trusts. I spent a couple of years on funds as well. So I think there was quite a natural progression to it. But now that I look back on it, it is actually quite it's quite a fortunate position to be in, that I have such a broad background.
Yeah, and given that kind of basket of stuff that we do, products, services, where are the highlights for you? What's exciting about?
I mean,
without necessarily discriminating against the others. I mean, what for you is like, yeah, this is where Gibraltar is doing really well. We're in this landscape of new technologies, fintech. What's exciting for you in that sense?
The core is always the fiduciary work. I think when you've been involved in trust work, and of course you've been for many years involved, you'll know that each particular case is always extremely interesting, and kind of the nuances or the complications that come with dealing with a trust case can be incredibly hard to deal with, but also incredibly fun to deal with as well. So I think that's an area that I particularly like. In terms of Gibraltar's strengths or our strengths, I think the funds industry has been going from strength to strength, and that's reflected in the funds team that we have here. And I think we've grown to quite a strong funds team at the moment, and specifically with crypto funds. I think it's a very interesting niche that we've allowed ourselves to be at the forefront of.
Yeah, and the fact is that expansion and that what's driven the growth in that area, but in other areas as well, I think is to do with the way that the jurisdiction itself is also moving on, is also evolving, plus also our ability internally to adapt to those changing circumstances. Bit of a throwback.
Okay.
You meet your 19-year-old self walking down Main Street. What's the best piece of advice you're going to give him apart from listen to Dad?
Well, for me personally, it would probably be don't be too hard on yourself. I think at that age, especially, you know, when you got the pressure of exams and you're young in your career, and inevitably, you know, mistakes happen, or you have a lot of, you know, learning curves, as it were. I was always my very worst critic when these things happen, and you really can get into a mental state where it becomes a little bit hard to deal with. And I think ultimately, you learn from every mistake, and you grow from every mistake. And I think without, you know, the early bits, I wouldn't be where I am today. And inevitably there's going to be more, but inevitably I'm going to grow from them. So I think it's about understanding the kind of mistake that you've made, but always looking at that silver lining and saying, how can I grow from it, and how can I become better?
I think I know the answer to some of these already. Morning person or night owl?
Well, I mean, morning probably, but maybe not too early, I'd say.
Okay. Excel spreadsheets or visualization dashboards?
Visualization dashboards all day long, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I think I know the answer to this one too. Client dinner, a fancy steakhouse or casual coffee shop?
It's fancy steakhouse.
Yeah,
every day of the week.
Yeah, totally. Most overused phrase in financial services. This is a good one actually, because so many cliches in the crypto space.
Well, you've taken the words out of my mouth. There's definitely two that come straight to my mind, and the first is this space. Yeah. That's for sure one, and the other one is synergies. Synergies. It's so overused nowadays, but yeah, those would be my two.
Okay. So, what would you say is the most fulfilling aspect of the role that you currently do? I mean, the industry expects certain characteristics from you, from the kind of area you're in. But what would you say is generally for you personally the most fulfilling aspect of what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier on one of the other questions, which was, you know, when a client comes back to you after you've done a good job, and I still think that is certainly the most fulfilling part. Another one, of course, is when you finish a piece of work and it's gone as smoothly as humanly possible, you know, and you know that not just in terms of your sales technique or your style, but the communication with the client has gone smoothly, the process with your team has gone smoothly, and you know you're kind of working towards something and you've ironed out all the wrinkles, and it actually, you know, it actually shows that. I think that's a very fulfilling part of it as well.
When client admin teams have to sit with, maybe not necessarily in the same geographical area, but when they have to sit with salespeople, BD people, that kind of meeting point is often a flashpoint, can often be a flashpoint.
Yeah.
What's your experience of doing that here at Abacus?
Yeah, it was actually one of the things that I wanted to improve on in terms of the cohesion between the BD team and other departments. I think the business development team, it's always been a little, you know, department, you know, in and of itself, and not necessarily very connected to the other teams. But I wanted to make sure that, you know, we keep the communication open, that you actually get to know the people in the admin team, the people in the accounts team, whatever the communication needs to flow through. And you get to know the person that you're dealing with, because everyone will want things done in different ways. They prefer communication to be through different methods. And I think we've actually come a long way with that. And thankfully, you know, we're still kind of probably the loudest corner in the office, but I think we're working pretty well now.
I think it's a great point to finish. Well done. Thanks for coming on.
No worries.
Part of the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.